Good luck, Harry Potter.
Well, cover me with eggs and flour and bake me for 40 minutes.
Hello and welcome to Screen Masters with me, Bav.
And me, Fluff.
And this week, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be looking at the Ip Man films. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong on any of this when I'm going through it, but is this series known in a particular way? Because I'm aware there are quite a few films around the same subject matter.
Sure, it's just as far as I'm aware referred to as the Ip Man series.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And they're Chinese, I guess Chinese produced, aren't they?
Yeah.
I certainly seem to be. So yes, we will be going through those today. But as always, in light of the subject matter of today, I would like to turn to the words of Carl Douglas, because this week everybody was kung fu fighting. Oh! I got a chuckle for that one.
Oh god!
Bloody hell!
Oh,
I can't remember the last time you actually.
No, you know what? I'll give you that one. That's that one. That was. It's better than some of your previous ones. So yeah. I was thinking like Ash Kung Fu or something like that. But no, that'll do. Yeah, that's fine. That'll do it.
Good stuff. Oh, well, that's a good start then. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get involved in the conversation, if you want to get in touch with us, you can head over to the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/screenmasters. It's building every day. We've had I think our numbers have nearly doubled in the last couple of weeks.
Sorry, isn't it / the Screen Masters?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's Facebook.
I mean, I don't even have Facebook. I don't even run the Facebook account.
No, I know, which is why I'm the one talking to everyone.
Yeah,
which is fine because
so
they're lovely
why are
people.
you remembering that? Come on, I know
because,
it's lockdown, but
you know
come
why?
on.
It's been exactly it's lockdown. Anyway, I'm still reeling from that thing we watched the other night.
That thing we watched the other night.
Yeah, because I can't call it a wrestling match because it wasn't a freaking wrestling match.
See.
It was like
yes.
a mini action sequence.
Yeah, sure.
From
very, very entertaining. Yeah, you would not look at that and go,
strange.
That's a wrestling match. That was pure, unadulterated entertainment for a good 20 minutes, half hour. Hilarious.
Some good nonsense. So yes, over there on facebook.com/the Screen Masters. He's quite right. I'd like to give a shout out to we'll use his in-game name and say Justin Zane if he's listening. Hello, sir. We've seen you on the seas in Atlas, and he got in touch through the Facebook page to have a chat. Alexa, why are you going off? I didn't say Alexa, did I?
No, not as far as I'm aware. I know we talked about wrestling and Alexa Bliss, but no. The wonders of technology.
She's still going. Alexa, stop. Sake, man.
Slightly how you talk to your
You didn't
children.
even say Alexa. Jesus, this has gone well, isn't it? Bloody hell. Anyway, yes. Hello to Justin Zane, our friend from Atlas. And also hello to I'm really sorry. I'm trying to find his name, so this may take me a second. Raymond Breitfeld. He is in a band in Texas, if you're in that area, called World 5. So, yes. Hello to him out there in Texas. I shit you not, actually a man from Texas. So hello, and hello to everyone else that we know who may be listening in these times.
How's it going?
It's crazy times. We hope you're okay. We hope everyone else is okay there. But as we've said before, let's get off that and let's start with what you've been watching. We've had plenty of time on our hands.
Yeah,
what have you been watching?
So I've gone through a few spells of animes.
Okay.
So one of them, now you'll have to forgive the title because the title is absolutely ludicrous.
Okay.
And it's How to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon.
Oh Christ, yes, I've heard.
Or is it okay to pick up girls in a dungeon?
Our friend Baggy was talking to me about this one.
Yes. So I'd seen it years ago. I couldn't fully remember it. And our good friend Baggy had watched it, and I spotted it was on Netflix. So I was like, okay, let's rewatch the first series. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Baggy then let me know that the second series was there, as was also a spin-off. So I've had a good 3 series of that. That was very, very entertaining. I also got round to watching the second series of One Punch Man.
Oh yeah.
That I pretty much did in one sitting because it was that enjoyable. Absolutely fantastic, as we've discussed in the previous anime episode. Thoroughly enjoyable. Really looking forward to how this is going to continue. I don't think the second series is up on Netflix yet. I managed to find it on another site. And the only other thing of note, really, I mean, I've watched a lot, but I know we'll get to other things. The only other thing I've really watched on a popular streaming site, lo and behold. Actually, no, Clone Wars. I finally finished the last series of Clone Wars. I do recommend that you go back and rewatch all of those, and then watch Rebels, and then we can have that conversation. Anyway,
Well, this is something I need to discuss
yeah.
with you anyway. Was can I jump in at this season, or
No.
have I got to go back?
No, you
Because
need
I
to go
remember
back.
I've discussed going back with you before.
Yeah, yeah.
And the way you explained it to me was that it's a jumbled continuity mess.
It
You have to
is.
watch 5 episodes in this series that then follow on to
Well, you
5
could,
episodes from
yeah.
the next series.
You
And
could.
it's like,
It
what?
is, yeah, it is very weird. Like I say, there is a chronological order to it, and then there's kind of a story-based approach to it. You would not suddenly be able to jump into this last season and understand half of what is going on. This is
Okay,
tying up the
that's fine.
threads. But don't get me wrong, there is
So
some
we'll stick that on a
fantastic
project
stuff.
list then.
That's on a project
I
list.
will download that then.
So the other thing, other than that, is The Last Kingdom. Don't know if you've seen it on, as I say, a popular streaming site. It's just released its 4th season. It's basically about the Saxons Vikings period, about a bunch of Vikings that kind of invade England as it was back then. And I won't say too much on it, but it's that kind of medieval thing. It's one that's kind of flown under the radar for me.
I'm not surprised because as you're saying that, I'm thinking, hang on, isn't that a series called Vikings that's on
Yeah,
Amazon
it
Prime?
is.
Isn't that a
It's
series that's called
really.
this
It
that's
has.
on that? Isn't that?
Yeah, very
Because it was Game
similar
of Thrones,
premises
wasn't
and
it? Game of
stuff. Yeah.
Thrones spawned all this.
Yes.
Some good, some bad.
Yeah. But no, the acting in it is actually quite good. The story is quite good. I really found myself very much involved for a good couple of seasons. I've finished the 3rd, but I haven't got around to the 4th again because I've watched a lot of that. So sometimes you need a break. But yeah, some good battle sequences. Sometimes that is, one of the things. Like you look at Thrones and stuff like that, and it was okay. But this is really good, really gritty, very, very gritty, and very enjoyable. So yeah, that's kind of my side of things. How about
Cool.
yourself?
Well, I've been locked down with children, so I'm limited. So I've watched Playing with Fire, which is
the
John
Cena film?
Cena, John
Yep, sure.
Leguizamo, and oh Christ, I always get his name in the wrong order, but I'm going to go with Keegan Michael Key. Yes, because it's Key and Peele. So Keegan Michael Key.
Yeah.
Yes, it must be that. And some children. And it was a Nickelodeon film, and you know what? I laughed. I thought it was quite funny in places. Cena was very good. Keegan Michael Key was who he always is, but he's entertaining in that role. John Leguizamo's character actually had some really funny lines. His character would misquote things, and then say it was a quote from the wrong person. But then the joke is that as the film goes on, he gets closer and closer to being right. And then finally, he gets a quote absolutely bang on, and it's a quote from like Rainbow Dash in My Little Pony.
Right, okay.
So it's just really funny. I found it funny anyway. But,
sure.
Yeah, that was actually not bad. I thought it was, judging by the trailer, because a lot of these things I worry it's all going to be potty humor and stuff, poop jokes and that. And, a poop joke is fine in a kid's film. You need that sometimes. But I hate it when it's all about that. And the trailer kind of made it look like it was going to skew that way, but it totally didn't. It skewed really nicely. It had a very good message. I think it's genuinely quite a funny little film that I'd recommend to anyone with kids. We watched Trolls World Tour as well, the new Trolls film, which I was worried about because, again, the trailers for that make it look like Rock's the bad guy. And I hate the fact that rock music is always viewed as the bad guy in everything because everyone's scared of rock and metal. But But actually, it was totally fair, and it mocked all types of music fairly. Mary J. Blige voiced the Queen of Funk. Ozzy Osbourne voiced the King of Metal. So there were some good jokes in there for the children, for the adults, and it was entertaining. And Sam Rockwell was quite funny in it as well. He voiced a character in it too. So again, I'd recommend that for anyone with children. The only thing, sorry,
I was just going to say, clearly not everybody would be recommending that right now because there's obviously caused a lot of uproar.
well,
that
absolutely,
releasing
yes.
online.
I mean, I hear
so
Odeon
that's
are very displeased with them, but yeah, I mean, you never know though. I still think people are going. I'd have taken my children to see it in the cinema had that have been available.
Mhm.
We only, rented it because that was the only option we had. So, I would have paid money to go to the cinema to watch it. So, I would go back to that. For when the cinemas are back again, I'll go to the cinema again. I would rather watch it big screen if it's a film I want to. It doesn't change for me. That's my point. If I want to see the film, I want to see it in the best possible way I can.
Yeah.
In the best possible format. If I am that passionate about the film. If I'm not, yes, I'm quite happy for a home release. The only adult type thing I've watched is the Birds of Prey, the Fabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, or of one Harley Quinn, something like that. Which was actually a shitload more fun than I was expecting it to be. And that potentially it has any right to be. And I'm not just saying this because Mary Elizabeth Winstead's in it.
Shocker.
She's quite funny, actually. She's just very angry, but she does it quite well. But yeah, it's quite interesting because you can look at that film and I can see bits of that film and go, you see, that's what Suicide Squad should have done instead of doing it this way. And, we've discussed before about exposition and my feeling that sometimes bad writing is just having a character exposition dump because there are other more inventive ways of doing it. And this film's quite a good example of that. It has quite a simple story because it needs to spend the first half of the film putting the pieces together. But because it uses Harley Quinn as a narrator who herself is quite, disjointed and schizophrenic, she tells the story in the wrong order. So it doesn't, you chop forwards and backwards in flashback sequences, learning about the people that she's running into in the chronology of the film. And you sort of start at the beginning and you don't get back to that point in the narrative until about 40 minutes in. And by that point, through all these little flashbacks and chopping and changing and telling the narrative forwards and then realizing she's missed a bit out, so she goes back to tell you that little bit. And doing them in a flashback sequence and, like I say, doing them with her as the narrator so they can, that unreliable narrator thing, you can put a personal spin on it. You can make things look a particular way because it's this person's interpretation of what's happened. And I think they do it really well. It's the kind of film that when my daughter is old enough, she will absolutely adore, and I will very much enjoy showing her because it is, it is girl power to the extreme. There's only 2 significant male characters in it, I would say, being Ewan McGregor's baddie, Black Mask, who's quite good, and the sidekick Victor Zaz, and they're the only 2 real male, cast members that have a point other than the background fodder. So it is all about the girls and the female characters up front, and they do really well. And it's not just like they have the tragic backstories. They're fully rounded superhero characters. It's fantastic, and like I say, it's the kind of film that she loves the Avengers, but she wishes more of them were like Black Widow. She wishes there was more representation of her gender there. So this thing will be perfect for her when we get there because it sets up the Birds of Prey as a goody team and splits Harley back off from them by the end because presumably she's going to be in James Gunn's Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I mean, it's not one that's on my, kind of high to watch list. Again, but mainly because I'm not been very enamored by the DC universe.
Oh no, I totally agree.
Films. So it's been reluctant to watch that. It's a shame that it didn't do as well. I think obviously, Margot Robbie is a fantastic actress, as we've discussed
And
previously.
her and the fact of Mary Elizabeth Winstead was in it were the main driving factors why I thought I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah.
I've got one more thing I was gonna discuss with you, but I think we'll save that for the next episode. Because I've gone on long enough, and we might as well get into the main topic.
Sure. Sure.
So, Ip Man. His name's Ip, as far as I can see. So this series of films is a it's autobiographical, isn't it? Is it based? I didn't catch whether it was based on a book or anything.
No,
or is
it's loosely
like,
based
did it
on
have
his
anything
life.
to do with it? And again,
No.
listeners, I turn to Fluff because this is very much born of Fluff's passion. Not mine. Not to say that I don't thoroughly enjoy watching these films and should be watching them again, but this one was your passion that you've spoken about for some time. And I thought it was about time I gave them a watch and we had a look at them. So yeah, I may turn to you for more of the factual background on this.
Sure. No, I mean it's from what I know of it. It's a story about Ip Man as he was, and we know a little bits about him from the media before all of the films and things like that because he was Bruce Lee's master. Now, obviously, Bruce Lee, everybody in the world knows who Bruce Lee was, and everything that surrounded him, but we don't know as much about who trained him, which is Ip Man. He was his teacher. And so for years, I think there have been other films come out about Ip Man, but not in the scope and scale, I think, of this series. Obviously, finding the lead in Donnie Yen. I've watched some of the other series, other films based loosely on Ip Man. I find Donnie Yen's version of him to be the best. But that's just my interpretation. I love Donnie Yen. I think he's a great actor. And I think he's a great martial artist. So this is loosely based around Ip Man's life. Now, there's a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily know about him. And there's also stuff that they don't portray in the films. Apparently, he had a bit of a drug addiction at one point, and he wasn't always the best character. We obviously always get the best of these kind of historical figures on screen in often is the case here.
Generally, yes.
I think a good portion of it is fictional, but I think the underlying tones, his mythos, is everything about him seems to be true. The way that he held himself, the way that he looked at martial arts and his students, etc., etc. I think that's all very true. Obviously, the personal life, I know for a fact that he had multiple wives and different children and things like that. Again, not necessarily depicted that way in the films, but I'm just kind of putting that bit aside and just going in, watching this loosely. We all know that these kind of films are loosely based on these people.
Yeah,
not exact.
But that's the interesting thing. As I was going through it, I was thinking, wow, I wonder whether this really happened.
A good portion of it,
there are
especially the first
lots of
film,
it that you can think, oh yeah, I bet that happened.
Yeah,
but then there are parts where I go,
film,
no, I'm not so sure. But
a good portion I know of the first film very much did happen because yes, he was in China when the Japanese invaded, etc. So yeah, that all happened, and he lived through it, and he started his schools, etc., etc. Felt backlash from various communities and the different. We'll get into that.
I was going to say you just planned through the episode. Then
through. Yeah, sorry.
I'll just flick through all my notes here and
that's
get to where you got
that's
to.
Fine. But I'm emphasizing the fact that yes, some of it is fictional, but a good portion of this is totally true.
It's interesting. That's fascinating. I'd be, I know he died in 1974 or something. We'll get there with it, but So I wonder whether he wrote whether there is a transcript of his life out there, an autobiography or anything, or he strikes me as the kind of man who wouldn't do that. So
well, he in his final days, he again, it's an interesting thing. In his final days, he made sure that his son was also a pupil of his, and he made sure that there was a record. So it's one of the few videos that is kind of that old.
Oh
And
yes,
he
of course.
does,
It's right at the end, isn't it?
yeah,
He
it
tells him
is.
to record it.
Yeah, and that is like one of the points where I think he left part of his legacy because he was getting to that point in his life, and
Mm,
just being able to see that again at the end of the film, you just kind of go, "Wow, this is real." This is quite. So yeah, again, his legacy were his students, and I think
mm,
that's where the martial arts, is really good in that way, because it's not all about, oh, who's written down and this, that, and the other. Yes, there's obviously a bit of ego to it, but for him, it was passing it all down.
mm. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so yeah, we start with Ip Man in 2008. From 2008, because we actually start in Foshan in China in 1935. So it opens on this small town, I would call it, in China. In this period, we see a fella has opened a new school, and he goes and challenges Master Ip, because I said, he wants to prove he's the best, and Ip Man's the best. Like you say, it's a big sort of honor and ego thing at times, with the heads of the martial arts school or the newcomers to the area. They always have got to beat the top of the tree to prove that they're worthwhile. And that opening fight sequence is really, really, really good. I really enjoy it. It's very entertaining. And it has a bit of humor with it as well,
Mhm.
which I quite enjoyed. And you have the whole thing beforehand with again tying into the honor of, I'll fight you, but I haven't eaten, so I'm going to eat first, and he'll wait, and then he invites him to eat with them, so they eat and they share cake and tea, and then they're like, right, let's go and fight now. And the humor sort of plays on that for me. Then a gang of baddies ride into town. And again, I call them baddies, and a lot of times I'm referring to the bad guys as just baddies, because partly a couple of the copies of a couple of the films had really bad subtitles. So the name changed sometimes, and sometimes there wasn't a name in the subtitles, even though I was fully aware someone had said someone's name because I heard them say Sifu, which is master.
Yeah.
So I know they said master something, but the subtitles just said master. I was like, oh, for God's sake. So yes, apologies. I don't have all the names in some of these things. So yes, gang of baddies run into town, and then we watch the gang go around the town, taking out all the different masters from the different schools, and of course he finally works his way up to Ip, and then that one I'm fairly sure is an absolutely incredible fight, not just from the point of view of the martial arts, but the again, the undercurrent of humor that's woven into it that never feels out of place to me. It always feels perfectly timed and perfectly judged. But there's a bit where is that the fight where his son cycles through on his little tricycle and they stop fighting, and because Ip's like, I'm not going to fight you, and everything's getting smashed up, and his wife said, don't smash anything. And halfway through the fight, her son comes in, and Ip hasn't really fought; he's just evaded. And the boy comes round and says, Mummy says you better start fighting before he breaks everything. And I
just wheels out as well.
Yeah, and then just cycles out the other side, and Ip Man's like, oh, okay, fine. So he actually starts fighting him. Like you say, the fight sequences are fantastic, and they get better as they go along, mostly. But I really enjoy that early fight, and a lot of the fights in this first film are some of my favourites of the whole.
Yes, so
the
I
whole
would
thing.
wholeheartedly agree.
So yeah, Ip Man, Jin. That's who it is, isn't it? Jin fights Ip, and that's because this is the point where I finally got the lead baddie's name. You see, so yes, Jin fights Ip. He beats them, and because he's not running a school at this stage, is he?
No.
He's just the Wing Chun master, and everyone else runs the schools at this point. And then we sort of close that chapter, and as much as I love the first film, it does feel disjointed because of what it's doing in the narrative. Because it's telling a man's life through certain changes, and instead of seeing them necessarily, we just get little montage sequences with dates on and physical text telling us what's happened. So anyway, we reach 1937. Japan invades China. All kind of hard times, brother. And we get a little war montage again to show us. Then again, comes up on screen. It's 1938. Specifically, Foshan has now been invaded. Ip Man and his wife have been kicked out because the Japanese have used their home as the base of operations. And he ends up working in a coal mine, digging down. Then the Japanese, is it General Sato, I want to say, comes down. The baldy fellow with the glasses, was he General Sato? Because he's the one who actually goes to the coal mine with the lackey.
Yeah,
again,
I think he's.
I may have the lackey's name at some point.
General
I can't
Mura,
remember.
I think he is. And
General Mura is the
yeah.
main general, but he has like a lackey general that's like his number 2 with little circular glasses and a bald head. He's a much shorter fella.
I think he is Colonel Sato.
Colonel Sato. Then I'm sure it was Sato, but I couldn't.
That was it. I'm trying to remember the. Yeah.
So yes, Sato and an interpreter, translator, go to the coal mine and are looking for martial artists because they've heard Foshan is rich in martial artists, to go and fight at the behest of General Mura, who is an absolute monster-looking fella, and which is what you expect. That's the way these things go, isn't it? It's always small guy who fast versus big guy who not. But actually, this one isn't quite like that, is it? So Lin, Ip Man's friend, he's not related to him, I don't think, is he? I struggled in the early part. I kind of wondered whether everyone was related.
Master Lee.
No, Lin, his little buddy. His little
I think he
ends up in the mine. The one who dies, he's coming up.
Yeah, I think he's just a friend because I think again,
I think he's just
we meet him at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
I think isn't he the guy who's I think he's the guy who was he was at the beginning of the film. I'm sure he was.
Like you say, he's introduced at the beginning, and his wife gets angry with him because he keeps Ip doing work, doing kung fu instead of spending time with his kids and stuff. Anyway, this fella Lin goes off because you're told that if you fight, you get bag of rice afterwards. So yeah, 3 blokes go off, and we get Lin's fight sequence. Now that is, I thought that was an incredible sequence from start to finish. The cinematography really got me on it, and the I don't want to say the score because it's not the score, but it's the sound design, I guess, in general of that sequence, because it ends with Lin's heartbeat dying and his heartbeat fading away. But it's done so brilliantly that you don't realize his heartbeat has actually been in the background of the sequence for most of it. And it's only that right at the end, as he's getting beaten, that they start stripping away the rest of the score, and they just leave it with the heartbeat. And it's incredible because it's there the whole time, but you don't notice it until they start stripping away the stuff that's on top of it, and you realize that beat has been the background beat of the music. It's such a clever sequence, and again, the way they do it in that way with it dying, just I don't know, the drama really, it really got me. I thought it was a brilliant sequence, a beautiful sequence, that really did the character justice. So anyway, Lin dies, and that was Ip Man's buddy. The next day, Ip's back at the coal mine. They come back to get some more fighters, and Ip Man's asking where Lin is, and they won't tell him. So he's like, all right, I'll go and fight so that he can try and find out where he is. When Ip's there, I think it's Master Liu, isn't it, from the beginning?
Yeah, from the beginning.
The master from the beginning who fought him. He is fighting and, well, kind of gets greedy, but then, yeah, gets dead. Because he decides to fight more people to try and get some more food, and he loses the fight and still tries to take the food. So Miura's second in command, Sato, shoots him. But then Miura's not very happy with him at all after that.
Yeah. I mean, so he wins his first battle. He then challenges 3.
Yeah.
He insists on fighting 3 at once, but then loses. So he goes to collect his initial winnings, which is perfectly legitimate. But
yes,
yeah,
you're quite
that
right,
was
because he won his first fight, didn't he?
Yeah, and the other guy's just like, no, bugger to that, and then just shoots him in the head. Like you say, Miura is not happy about it.
No.
But he's just like, this is a dojo, you don't do that here. We don't use weapons. We use, our fists, kind of a deal. So yeah, that was, again, it was a little thing for this individual. He's like, he's not going out there to kill them. He's like, he genuinely believes,
and again, it
his
plays
martial arts is the strongest.
Exactly, and he plays through with the whole thing with martial arts. Honor. Again, he it's fine. As far as Miura is concerned, he was honourable.
Mm-hmm.
If he wants to take the winnings from the first fight, of course he can. He won the fight.
Yep.
He didn't win the second. That's fine. Off he goes. So after witnessing this, Ip is decidedly displeased. Gets in there and says he wants to take on 10 men. So my exact notes, because I sat and watched this whole thing. Just as one, I was like, I don't want to take notes during this because this is going to be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So I am just going to watch this and then pause it and make some notes if I need to. Some of my notes are, wow, that was a 10-on-1 handicap match.
Mm-hmm.
The freaking speed of his hands is insane.
Yep.
The Foley work, and I'm guessing everyone who's listening to this knows what Foley work means, but it's the, making sounds. It's the people who make sounds for sound effects and the different instruments they use for it. But anyway, the Foley work. Oh, damn, I just ruined my own joke. The Foley work, and no, this isn't a wrestling reference, has so much to make it feel real and impactful. And I thought it was brilliant, and it's the closest thing you can get to a squash match when you're facing 10 men, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, Donnie's not only a fantastic martial artist, and again, those bloody fists, that was my favourite part of any fight sequence, really, was when he just went absolutely mental.
When he does
with his
the
punches.
like 50 punches in a row.
Because it's up and down the body, round the side.
Yeah.
And he's
when
just
he does
constant.
that, I have a little smile because I'm like, he's letting that rage out. Oh my God. Yeah.
Now, fair enough. From a film point of view, I don't know whether they are, but they may be cranking the footage to speed it up a little bit to make it look faster. But I've got to be honest, at this early stage in these films, I don't think they are.
No.
Because normally you can tell when it's been cranked, because other things, you can always catch something moving at normal speed in the background. And suddenly you look at that and it's sped up. So it shows you that the rest of the footage is sped up. And I couldn't see any of that with this. And again, this is Donnie Yen, 12 years ago. I think he was probably just that pissing fast.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I genuinely think he's that good and he's that fast.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, I was not a I don't watch that much in the way of martial arts. So I've tried to watch a few here and there, but it is unbelievable how quickly he is. But again, I don't think this is the kind of film you don't see any CGI and things like that. This isn't the kind of film that would do that. That's him. That's
Absolutely.
him and his stunt
Absolutely.
team.
And again, at this point, there's very little wire work. And yeah, like you said, Donnie Yen, he plays that whole sequence so fantastically. We've been watching him. He's always passive, calm. Always seems to be very much a path of least resistance kind of man. He'll always make the compromise to keep everyone else happy, and suddenly that's gone. He's angry. He's sad. He's emotional for the first time in the films. So we then, after this, he takes his. No, does he take a bag of rice? I can't remember.
He takes the rice, not
Oh, he
his rice.
takes Lou's
just
rice,
takes
doesn't
Lou's
he? That was
rice,
covered
yeah.
in blood. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
and he takes it to his family.
That's right. Then we cut back, and the baddies that we were watching earlier, Jin and his crew, are back, and they are stealing goods from Chan, who, again, I'm sure isn't Ip's brother, but they call each other brother a lot. He's Jin. No, he's not Jin's brother. Is he Jin's brother? No, he's not. Anyway, Chan, bloke who runs factory, was trying to help Ip out earlier in the film.
Yeah, so Ip,
he's
as I
getting robbed.
recall, I think he was at the beginning of the first film. He's the person that he gives money to help
Yes,
him
he does,
do
to
his
set up a
factory.
factory. Yeah, you're quite right.
And
To
so
set
he's his
something up, a
investor.
mill, isn't it?
Yeah.
A mill. That's right. So he's indebted to Ip. So they're getting stuff stolen from them, and they ask Master Ip to train them in Kung Fu so that they can fight back should the people come back again. We cut back to General Miura at this stage, who wants his translator / lackey to go and find him, to go and find Ip, because Miura wants Ip back because he wants to fight Ip himself. There's a great sequence there with the translator, and I call him a lackey because, again, that's what the subtitle. That's the term the subtitles used when Ip describes him as such. The term it used was lackey. So we discover at this stage that actually he's taking a fucking pounding back from his bosses to try and keep Ip hidden, basically. So it's, a character that we've despised from the start, and who's been, we've seen other people calling him a traitor and such. And actually, you suddenly get a little bit of background on him and realize it's not quite as cut and dry as you thought. Then we cut back again to the cotton mill that's getting raided again. And the little training montage we saw really helped. They're able to fight back, and then Ip shows up to whoop some ass and finish him off. And again, the Ip versus the boss of the baddies, who I'm sure is Jin.
Jin, yeah.
It's so inventive, that little fight sequence in there, because it's quite an enclosed space with machinery around and little bits of bamboo scaffolding, and Ip's got a massive long pole, and I don't mean that as a euphemism. He just has a very large bamboo pole in his hand that he intends to fight with, and it leads to some really inventive, creative spots.
It's the thing is about this film, and I think it runs the trend, and we'll probably talk about it in 2, 3, and 4. Is it kind of ups the factors a little bit more? It kind of takes these original bases, this small confined space with a few weapons. I think it's like long bamboo shoots and stuff like that, and he's just. Again, it kind of tries to take it a little bit more and up the game a little bit more. I think one of the things that I love about this first film, more so than some of the other fight sequences, is because it is kind of just a little bit more polished. It doesn't go too far, if that makes sense. Believable, if that makes
Yes,
Whereas
absolutely.
It kind of pushes the realm a little bit more as it progresses. But
I
in
wouldn't
this film,
use the word polished. I actually think these feel more raw. And
yeah, sorry,
realistic. I feel the later stuff feels quite polished.
Yeah, sorry, I meant polished in the sense of it feels smooth and organic, whereas
yes,
the other
I see what you
ones,
mean. I get what you're
different
saying.
destination, yeah. But yeah, it's again, we're building to this point in the film where he's got, again, Ip Man's gone through enough hardships, but he's still retained the character that he is. He's still helping the community. He's still helping them fight off these guys, and still willing to kind of do the right thing, even given the circumstances and the fact that he is being hunted. He still goes out there and goes and defends. And we'll get to that next bit anyway.
So yes, we have this little fight, and then it's time for the real boss fight that we've been pitching to right from the start. So Miura finally finds Ip, and sets him up. Is it like a town square or something? Isn't it? They set up an area there for Miura and him to fight. Unbeknownst to Ip and to Miura, Sato orders someone to shoot him. Shoot Ip should he win the fight, even though his life has been, guaranteed by the General Miura. Again, just an incredible martial arts fight sequence. The fact that the director of the film can use slow motion, close shot footage, and still have everything look legitimate and like it's connecting, it is just an utter testament to Donnie Yen, and in fairness to Miura, the actor playing General Miura, because obviously he has to be at least a competent martial artist as well. But it was that bit that got me. That just slow motion, no CG, no fucking about. It's generally, genuine footage of Donnie Yen, well, supposedly fake punching someone. But it looks like it's real. I don't understand how they've done it. Because, again, I know there's no CG in there. I know there's no bollocks. I know it's genuine fight footage. But, like I say, how fucking good are you that the director can use slow-mo footage and have it look absolutely genuine? It's just crazy.
It is. I mean, I think this is the testament to these films is, and I think Donnie Yen has gone on record on saying he wouldn't be able to do this without the stunt team that he worked with. I know that he said that this was the most challenging thing at that point, obviously, in his career, taking on this role. I mean, this is a prominent martial artist of huge renown, and to take that on and try and embody him not only philosophically and everything within that character, but also physically, the actual martial arts behind it is phenomenal. The beating that they each take, and you just you look at it, and like you say, you feel that, and you just think, gee, how is either of them standing at this moment in time?
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you keeping up the stamina of this as well? It's unbelievable.
No, I think that... I can't decide a favorite fight, but I do think of the main boss fights, if you like, the sort of the final boss fights that we get in each film, because essentially that is a martial arts film trope. That is what happens. You're building towards the big boss fight at the end. I think this one's probably my favorite of them because it's the most, like as you say, that I would almost say down to earth, realistic. Like you said, doesn't push it too far necessarily. So Ip wins, yay, and then gets shot. So I was like, oh, and Ip Man's dead, because it just sort of fades to black with Ip Man bleeding on the floor in the town. I was like, so I'm gonna guess he's not dead unless the sequels are actually prequels. And then of course it comes back up, and we discover he's fled. They've fled to Hong Kong, if I remember rightly.
Yes.
1945, the war ends. We then, and this a little bit that confused me. So we then go through again, visual sequences of 1945, the war ends. 1949, he moves to Kowloon Bay in Hong Kong and settles and sets up a school. And then has text to explain the rest of his life, like going right up until his death. And I was like, my notes are just like, I'm gonna guess they didn't have plans for sequels at this point.
Well,
because otherwise I do not know why the fuck you put that on the end.
So at the same time as that this film was being produced, there was a little bit of controversy because at the same time there was another film that was being made, another biopic, which ended up being called Grandmaster. And essentially,
yeah, that's one of the other ones I've seen. That's on. I haven't watched it yet, but it's on Netflix, I think.
Yes, again, yeah. So it's Ip Man, but from a different perspective and a different story. And so because of that, there was a bit of controversy. And so they put it this way: you have two biopics coming out of the same guy. You don't necessarily know that one's going to do really, really well.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And so, yeah, they decided to tell that part of the story without thinking, okay, we'll do a sequel. Which is, in hindsight, you think about all of the films in today, they kind of gave it a finality. It's like, okay, you know what, one and done. If we wanted it, one and done. Whereas now, they're also open-ended. They all open themselves to sequels. Every bloody film in this day and age, it gets a bit ridiculous. So
absolutely. So we move on. Unless you wanted anything else to say about it, man. First one?
no, look, I mean, I'm glad
for it.
finally that we got to talk about it, man, because
Mm.
it is a film I'd seen a good little while ago. I can't remember. I think it was our friend Baggy who'd recommended the first one to me at the very least. I think he'd seen it. So I just watched it, and when I started it again, I've watched a lot of subtitle films in my day, but this is the first one where I didn't want to blink, like, because there's even the small subtleties of this film are very important. I think it's beautifully shot, fantastically well acted, especially Donnie Yen. I love him in this character. I really think he portrays a great character here. Just the very stoic character that he can be, very reserved with his emotions up to a point.
Yes.
The fight
Like I say,
sequences
there's
are
that
absolutely
one
phenomenal.
bit where he, as you say, lights up and suddenly we get some emotion from him. And
Yeah.
it's so very different to everything else we've seen at that point in the film.
Yeah, again, the relationship he has with his wife is very important, and it does progress that way throughout the
absolutely.
films. Again, with his kids, it kind of comes and goes a little bit but again, his wife is very important. That loving relationship there, despite all the hardships and things like that, the fact that she doesn't love the fact that he's constantly training for fights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for me, the standout thing was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, was that 10-on-1? And he just cripples every single one of them within 2 or 3 hits. And then when he does the 100 punch, all over the guy, I was just like, okay, this is phenomenal. So yeah, I'm glad that we're getting around to talking about him.
So, Ip Man 2, 2010, which then surprised me because I was like, shit, 2 years later. So you must have had the first one. You must have had the second one in pre-production when you were doing the first. By the time the first finished, you fucking idiots. Why did you put the bit on the end? Anyway, we pick up in 1950, pretty much around where it left off at the end of the first film with some of the text. We're in Kowloon Bay in Hong Kong. I tell you what, I've spelt Kowloon Bay, Kowloon about 4 different ways throughout this entire thing, and I don't even think I got it right by the end. He's got his school now in Kowloon Bay. No, why do I keep calling it Kowloon Bay? That's because of Tomorrow Never Dies. So he's in Kowloon City, and he's got his school, but he's got no recruits at the minute. But he's got his family and a baby on the way, and we get a bit more hard times, brother, and a bit more of a hard times montage because they're destitute, and well, they're not destitute, but they have a very meager living at the minute. And we see his wife scraping the last few pieces of rice out of the bowl for them to cook and stuff, and he goes and pawns his watch, I think it is, to get some money for rice again. But yes, so when it gets started, he finally starts to get the school going, and there's quite a nice little montage of him getting the school expanding. They're getting more students. There's one of them says, because obviously he's got there's a reputation that's followed him. Oh no, it's not this one. I'm sure this fella who just randomly asks him, "Could you beat 10 men at once?" And he just sort of smiles to himself. I think actually it's like in 3 or 4, someone specifically asks him about the story. But yeah, this one is just like someone randomly saying, "Can you defeat 10 men at once?" And I was like, yeah, that's funny. And I really enjoyed the sort of there's a very brief explanation in part of the montage about the methodology and sort of the mythos, not mythos, but the history behind the Wing Chun style.
Yeah.
and why it is what it is and how it is the way it is. I really enjoyed that. I'd have liked a couple of minutes more of that, I think, actually, to get into because I'm aware there's different styles, but the only reason I'm aware is because someone goes, "Oh, I'm Wing Chun style. Oh, I'm Dragon style. Oh, I'm Green Tiger style," or whatever it might be. I don't know why they're different in terms of the moves, the ideology behind them, how you go about learning them, all that sort of stuff. I would have liked a little bit more of that throughout these films, I think.
I think this is
But
this
that's
is the
just me
funny
personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's the funny thing because we talk about the martial arts, but I think that sometimes people forget the second word of that is arts, and it is an
Mm,
artistic way
absolutely, yeah.
of them fighting. And like you say, they each have their own unique style. It depends according to their personalities and things like that.
Mm,
We've seen it in many films over the years. Each one has a distinct fighting style based on their personalities and stuff like that. This very much just kind of follows suit, and Wing Chun is very much in the vein of its, master Ip, because of that. That is his approach to life, is his fighting style as well.
yeah. See, I'd like a little bit more of that. We get a little bit with Quan, who's the factory owner, and that was harsh as hell.
Hmm.
Bless him. Some bad shit happened to him. And then I've put new baddies because suddenly we get the random gang of baddies turning up. So who do we have? Leung. I'm gonna go with Leung. He fights and wins. But the baddies outnumber him. Dishonorable fighting. He's captured, and Ip has to go and rescue him to have a nice big fight to get his student back. Jin shows up from the first film, who was the lead baddie of the gang of baddies that were going around Foshan. And he's deaf in one ear, so even like everyone is suffering now. Everyone's got bad shit going down with them. It turns out that Hung, who is the head, Master Hung, who is the head of the sort of the kung fu schools or the martial arts schools of Kowloon, is working with the British via another lackey. But even at this stage, I wrote down, but I think the Brits are going to screw him because it just seemed too obvious for that not to be the case. There's a funny little sequence then with Jin and Ip and Lung in, who's his student in prison, chatting together. That's quite an entertaining little sequence. And Ip Man has to go and see Master Hung and all the other masters of Kowloon to be allowed to open, even though he's opened it, in order to actually have permission to open his school, he needs to go and see them and get their approval, as it were. So to start with, he fights Master Law and Master Cheng, I believe, which they're very entertaining. They fight on a table, and the table is not fixed to the post in the middle, so it rocks left to right, and there's a balancing element to it. And I think Master Law it is when he gets off. Certainly, the subtitles on mine said that he said the table is very slippery, as an excuse as to why he lost.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite good. And then finally, Big Boss Master Hung jumps up there. Now, this, again, entertaining as this sequence was, it is not the type of martial arts kung fu stuff that I enjoy the most, because there was a lot of wire work here, because Master Hung is not a small gentleman. He's quite a rotund gentleman, and he is having to look like he is balancing on the edge of a table that's at a 45-degree angle to the pedestal that's in the middle of it. So yeah, there was a lot of wire work. But it was entertaining. I'm not going to say it wasn't entertaining, and this is the thing with these films. This is why I love certain parts of them totally, but then bits like this they're just not for me. That's just not what I like. I'm a very big fan of early Tony Jaa work as well, that where, specifically used to put on the cases. There is no wire work in this film. It's all actual, legitimately pulled off stuff. And I always just find that far more impressive and when watching. But, it's a good fight. It ends in a very spectacular way. But it is a draw. But Ip is allowed to run his school as long as he pays the protection money, which of course he doesn't want to pay. So then there's a huge brawl between Wing Chun style and whatever style Hung is the proponent of. I can't remember. And as a result, Ip Man is kicked out of the place that he's set his school up in. So Ip goes to see Master Hung to tell him to back off. But Hung tries to continue the fight and nearly hits his child. He also tells Ip that he's working with the Brits to allow the martial arts clubs to run, to try and explain to Ip why he has the rules he has, and that, he is being restricted on what he can do by the Brits. And here we then, get our introduction to where we're going for the finale of this thing. So the British are putting on a boxing match, and Hung is providing the workers, well, for free, it seems like. He doesn't want to be providing them for free to set up this thing. The British boxer wants to be a bit of a dick at the boxing match.
He's
And
a colossal bastard.
He's a twat, isn't he? But there you go. He has to be. And he gets into it with a martial artist. It basically just knocks the demonstrators the fuck out, essentially. It says some Chinese guys demonstrating Kung Fu, and he just knocks them the fuck out. Which leads to a massive British versus Chinese brawl. Lung gets knocked out. Ip Man and Hung sort of sort out the boxer a little bit and back him off. And then the boxer challenges Master Hung. And they have a boxing round style match or fight, whatever you want to call it. Hung isn't well, and we've seen hints at this throughout the film. He's been particularly, after the Ip fight, he was very, very drained, didn't seem to be particularly well, but he's obviously hiding it from everyone to not show weakness. And he dies. Again, it's a fantastically done sequence. The music, the cinematography, the whole package, it ties together beautifully, and again gives another fitting end to another interesting character who, once again, we started the film hating and thinking he was the bad guy, and now we realize actually he's not. His story was far more complicated, and he was never the bad guy. Christ, I've got to mention the main British bloke in charge of Hong Kong. Christ, his English accent was shit. And I've put English in quote marks because I don't even think it's a fucking English accent. It's awful is what it is. So some reporters have been publishing stories about the British behaving badly, and a man dying at the boxing event. So the Brits go after the reporters to try and shut them up. I've written here, Ip Man and Miller will tussle, I feel. And Miller is the name of the boxer, the British boxer. Miller, or I think Twister is his
the Twister
sort of boxing name, the Twister, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Twister, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, and then 2 seconds later at the press conference, I get my answer. I thought I recognized Miller, but he's just been in random shit. I don't know him from anything specific. He's in a random episode of Smalley. He's in The Marine 3 Homefront, which I think is the one where the Miz took over. I don't know. Anyway, like I say, he's just been in random random shit. Finally, the Mr. Hung's lackey / translator, who is, well, I've written Fatso. I don't mean to be mean,
No,
but
no.
that's all they refer to
Yeah,
him as.
yeah,
They
yeah.
just call him Fatso the whole way
Yeah.
through. So
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Fatso turns on the Brits finally and tells the reporter everything. So yay, he gets his redemption too. And then we get Ip versus the Twister. I noted at this point that the actor who plays Jin, who's the head of the baddie clan from the first one,
Mhm.
who is then back in this one and is now a goodie on Ip's side,
Mhm.
he really reminds me of Carl Urban, like in the way he looks.
Oh, okay.
Really reminds me of Carl Urban, specifically Doom Carl Urban.
Oh, okay.
In this
Specifically
particular film as
Doom
well.
Carl Urban. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
Doom
Well,
Carl Urban,
if we're
not
going to be
like,
specific about it,
crazy beard Carl Urban or something. Doom Carl Urban,
okay,
clean cut Carl Urban,
sure.
but with hair. Anyway, so we get into the fight again. It's boxing rounds type thing. Ip Man's down early, eek. But then Ip knocks Twister down. Yay. Round 2, Ip comes out with those insanely fast punches again, all over him. The bell goes, but Twister smacks Ip after the bell. And of course, there's no problem with that. That's fine. Because the judges are fixed.
In their pocket, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then we're into round 3. And of course, because the judges are in the pocket, they decide they're going to stop Ip from kicking. So he can't kick anymore. Some great babyface in peril booking to overcome insurmountable odds there. Ip goes down again, but gets up for the final time, I feel. He starts taking out the arms, and then he just deconstructs the bastard, I've written. Because he literally just... It's that thing again. He fires up, he takes his arms out, and then he just goes fucking mental with those fists. And like I say, I feel he almost does it. Donnie Yen almost plays it as a deconstruction. It's almost a top to bottom breaking down of a man, so that he's got nothing left.
Yeah, it's the fact that he has to change his strategy as he's going through this fight. He's just, again, he's watched Hung go through it, and he's like, as he's watching, again, this is the great thing about Ip Man. He studies his opponents. He understands their nuances. He knew when Hung was facing him, he was doing well. If Hung had been able to actually catch his breath a little bit more, he probably would have won that fight, but he didn't, and as a result, that's why he lost. Ip Man's doing the same thing. He's like, okay, I know what I need to do. This strategy isn't working. And then just by systematically taking the guy's arms down, he's like, well, he can't hit me if he can't use his arms. Fuck it, I'll destroy his arms. And it's absolutely, like you say, it's just when he gets into his own and suddenly gets in that zone, it's just unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, when he lights him up, it's incredible. And again, I don't feel there's a huge amount in this film. Yes, there's a bit more wire work and stuff, but I don't think any of that final sequence was cranked or anything. It played out, in the right speed, I think. So yes, of course, it wins. Yay. And even the Quan seems to be sort of back to normal-ish, or it seems to at least have an awareness of what the hell's going on now by the end, which was a nice little touch. The dickhead Brick gets taken down by his bad accented boss. Yay. And I liked, again, it's difficult to say because he's speaking in Mandarin, I assume, and I'm watching subtitles that I don't really know how accurate they are. But I thought the speech at the end was very good.
Oh, yeah, he's,
The text that I had to represent the speech that he makes at the end was a very good speech.
Yeah, that's
was
it.
Very well written and very well delivered.
He's just very Again, he's respectful. He respects the fact that it doesn't matter what race you are or culture you are. He's done it again with his own countrymen, with the different fighting styles and things like that. He's understood the prejudice that they had to him, and that's the thing. Is like, can we all just respect each other? It doesn't matter who we are and where we come from. Let's just have this mutual respect. And that's the epitome of what Ip Man seems to represent at times.
Yeah, I agree. So he then heads home, wife and new baby. So everything's good there. I mean, just a note on that end fight. I would imagine that's pretty hard to choreograph when you are, because again we get to a degree there's a mixture of styles in the next two films, but they're still mostly karate, or they're different styles of martial art. Boxing, choreographing a boxer to fight with a martial artist, I would have thought was probably very interesting to try and do. Because they are quite a drastic mix of styles. They're not, just sort of like, when you're still like I'm thinking of the Yanks in the fourth one. Is it the fourth one where he fights the Americans and their
yes,
karate?
It's the fourth one. Yes, it's the fourth one. Yeah.
Yes, with the bad drill instructor who wants to be Ali Ermey and never is. Yeah, that I can see that would have been tricky, but you're still essentially in the same ballpark, I feel. So then we get our little sting at the end with a young man, or a young child, really, coming into his office, telling him his name's Bruce Lee, and he says, "Come and see me when you're older." And then we get the weird, "Hey, here's what he went on to do," bit again at the end. I don't get it.
The thing is that I think
it's like he went on to do this, and he trained Bruce Lee in this year.
They genuinely don't know if they're going to make another one. Now, I will say for a fact that the fourth one, like Donnie Yen really didn't want to. After the third one, he really didn't want to come back and do a fourth one. But I think it was a case of, okay, we promised this is the last one, and here's a truckload of money. That may have been the incentive, I think, for the fourth one.
That's interesting, because I kind of don't want the last one.
I get that, and I understand that.
And it's and it's not because it's bad. Again, I hasten to add, it's not because it's bad. It's because these next two are the ones I struggle with the most. And it's not, I will say yet again, not because they are bad films. They are not badly made. The martial arts aren't bad. The problem is that the character's life is dark at this point, and it gets really fucking bleak.
Yeah.
And that by default makes the whole film feel really bleak, and means it's not necessarily a pleasurable thing to sit and watch.
No, I understand that totally. It's the third one we deal with. Well, we'll get there. We deal with certain issues within Ip's family. Fourth one, it's kind of Ip dealing with his own things and stuff like that. I think the thing is that even throughout each of these films, there has been a dark component to it. Especially, the first one being in the middle of a war, the fact that they were essentially, under lock because it was under an occupation in their whole country. That's pretty harrowing. The second one, again, not so much, but again, it's that view of racism and the fact that he's ostracized even from his fellow countrymen because of the style of fighter that he is. They just don't respect him, so he's going through hardship. But yeah, I suppose the next two get a lot more personal to Ip, and this is where it's a bit harsh because he's such a lovable guy. You don't want to see him go through this kind of hardship.
That's why I struggle with them, and you've hit the nail exactly on the head. It's not that I don't like dramatic storytelling or bleak storytelling when it's needed. The problem is that there's nothing offsetting it. I don't think you've got your standard storyline, and yes, of course he'll win the fight in the end, but there's no personal light for him at this point. And I, like you say, I struggle with that because I am so into the character at this stage and into the man and respect him and want to see him do well. And obviously that isn't the way life goes sometimes. All right, well, that brings us to the end of Ip Man 2. We still got Ip Man 3, 4, and Master Z Ip Man Legacy, the spin-off, to cover. So, shall we call it at this stage?
I think the people at home would love a nice two-parter from us.
Yeah, I don't want to rush you because, again, I know this is a passion project for yourself, so I don't want to have to try and cram everything in another 20, 40 minutes. When there's potentially more to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will call it at that. I will remind you again to go to the correct Facebook page, which is facebook.com/the Screenmasters. On that page, you'll find a pinned link at the top, a pinned post at the top with all the links to all the different stuff you need. There's a messages button there. You can send us a message. The quiz is still on there if anyone's interested in that. 40, I think I did, film titles with numbers in the name. And all I've given you is the number and the first letter of any other words in that film title. And you have to work out what the film title is. By the time this releases, I think the answers will be up on the site. If not, they will be up on the page next Friday as this releases. So, thank you very much, everyone. Until next time for part 2, which will be in a month's time, because we will be going for the TV episode next recording. I have been Bav.
I've been Fluff.
And this has been Screen Masters.